Hello students, today we will finally make our character vulnerable. At the start of the game, we will be given 3 lives and each enemy touch will deduct 1 life. Losing a life will restart the current scene, but the timer will not reset. If all lives are lost, the game will end. Let's recall where we left off. So, our game currently lasts only 5 seconds. After that, all processes stop and we see a message indicating that the level is completed. The only thing we forgot to do in the last lesson was to disable shooting. The character cannot move, but can still shoot. Let's quickly fix that. Go to the player shoot branch. Right after the timer block, insert another condition. The signal will proceed only if the variable is play is true. Don't forget to specify the ground object in the getter. Now the game truly stops. Switch to the Game Init branch and set the timer to 60 seconds. Now let's focus on our background and create a new integer variable named playerLife. Assign it a value of 3. Now add a plane to the scene. This will be an icon with a heart, next to which we will display the value of the playerLife variable. Place it in the top left corner. To make it easier, position it at the same coordinates as me. -9.3 on the x-axis and 6 on the y-axis. Let's name it Life. Scale it to the desired size and apply the scale. Create a material named Life. Go to the Shading tab. Replace the shader with the Armory PBR block. In the Asset folder, find the file named Heart and drag it into the shader editor. If you don't have this file, you need to update the project files. The download link is always in the description. Connect the alpha channel to the opacity input. You can also connect the color from the texture block or select it from the color palette. In the material properties, switch the transparency mode to alpha clip. Go back to the Layout tab. Find where we display the number of coins on the screen. Add the output of the number of lives to this chain. Copy these 3 blocks and connect them sequentially. In the getter, change the variable name to playerLife. And on the drop block, we need to change the y-axis coordinate. I'll set it to 250. Running the game, you can see that the number of lives is displayed where it should be, below the icon. Now let's think about how to implement life loss. First, we need to add collision checking with the enemy. We already have many logical branches, but I suggest creating one more for organization. Let's call it Player Collision. Let's immediately attach it to the player. All enemies, after appearing, are placed in the enemies folder. Therefore, organizing collision checking is very simple. Get the block, its contact array. Leave the owner field empty and connect the second channel to the collection block and choose the enemies folder. While we're at it, let's tidy up. Right now, I have some extra objects in the enemies folder that got there accidentally during creation. The enemies folder should be empty. I'll select all elements, press M, choose New Collection, name it HUD, and press OK. Now the enemies folder is empty, and all elements related to the game interface are now in a separate folder. So, what will we do if we touch an enemy? Let's try hiding the player from the screen using the Set Object Visible block. Excellent. The player disappears from view upon the first enemy touch. Along with this, all enemies should disappear from the screen, enemy spawning should stop, and player control should also be halted. We've already scripted all of this in the game init branch. We halt these processes when the timer equals 0. Copy to setters and paste them into the player collision branch. Again, don't forget to specify the ground object for the variable setter from play. Better now. Upon enemy touch, the player disappears from the screen, all enemies vanish, enemy spawning stops. Only one process remains, which also needs to be stopped. That's our timer. Currently, it keeps counting down. Let's freeze this process. In the game init branch, find the chain where we decrement the timer variable's value. And add one more condition. The timer should count down only if the variable isPlay is true. Let's check what we've got. After death, we see that the timer bar has stopped. Excellent. Now we need to restart the game, but not entirely, just from the same point. That is, we simply need to bring the player back on screen, enable their controls and shooting. Enemies should start appearing on the scene again, and the timer should resume counting down. It's simple. Right there, in the player collision branch, we pause for 3 seconds. Copy the Set Object Visible block. This time, we restore visibility to the player. Then connect copies of the two setters. Set the variable isPlay to true. And set the player speed variable to 0. 05. Also, for aesthetics, let's position the player in the middle of the field using the Set Object Location block. Now everything looks nice. Every time the player touches an enemy, we get a pause and a game process reload. In the original game, the timer doesn't start from the same value after a reload. After reloading, a little more time is added to the timer. Let's do the same. Add a setter to the timer variable chain, which is stored in the ground object. And assign it the current value from the getter plus 10 seconds. But we should only add time if the current timer value is less than 50 seconds, otherwise the timer will exceed its limits. So, add a gate block. Check the current value of the timer variable. And if it's less than 50, then add 10 seconds. Otherwise, simply assign the timer the maximum value. 60. All that's left is to add life loss. Add another setter before the pause. Subtract 1 from the player life variable. Immediately after that, add a check. The remaining code should only execute if the player life variable value is greater than 0. If lives are depleted, the game should end. For this, let's create another object, text. It's easier to copy the one we already created. Change the name to Game Over Text. Press Tab, change the text to Game Over. Just in case, check the Spawn checkbox. It should be inactive. Now copy the code chain from the game init branch that displays the congratulatory text on the screen. And paste this code into the player collision branch, connecting it to the false channel on the live check. Change the object to Game Over Text. That's all. If you die 3 times in a row, the game ends. For now, that's all we need. See you soon. Goodbye.